Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my home. It's open house today. I want each of you, all 300 million, come in and join me. Let's have a chat. You know, back in World War II, Franklin D. Roosevelt, our president, had a chat every week with the public to make them involved and understand what was going on. That's all I want to do. If you will join me, come on in, sit down, and make yourself comfortable. And let me just explain a little bit about my background. I am now 92 and a half years old. I remember when you were 8, 9, or 10, you always said, "Oh, I'm 7 and a half." You wanted to sound older. Well, at 92, you hope that everybody looks at you and says, "Oh, maybe he's 75. Well, I know when you're looking at me right now, you're saying, 92? He looks like he wasn't in World War II. He could have been in World War I. How about the Revolutionary War? We're all entitled to our opinions. When we look at each other, we size each other up. And sometimes we size each other up differently. So let me explain. I think we are all the same. Every one of us is God's children. Every one of us has a heart and a soul, and we all bleed red. There are some commonalities. Nobody's fingerprints will match anybody else's. And other things that happen to us are sometimes God has said, your skin color might be different. Your choice of faith may be different. Your sex, your male or female, may be different. And unfortunately, sometimes God says they may not be as healthy, either mentally or physically. But we must accept one another. The main thing we must remember, we all have a heart, we all have a soul, and we are brothers under the skin. You are me, and me is you. Keep that in mind. What God has told us over 5,000 years ago. It's almost unbelievable when we think of it. It's the time of the Hebrews in Israel. God sent down a commandment to love thy neighbor. Love thy neighbor. And then 2,000 years ago, Jesus, the bespoken Son of God, repeated that same commandment and said, love thy neighbor as you would like your neighbor to love you. And Mark, when we were coming up with the New Testament, said, that is our most sacred commandment. Okay, we go into our houses of worship, whether it is the Jewish faith or the Christian faith, and we read those words like they're bullets and we're in a war. That isn't what we're there for. We're there to absorb the message and act and perform that message that God has put into your mind. When I say there are differences between us, that's important to understand. How would this world look if everyone looked exactly the same? Everyone was an identical twin of the other. There would be no reason to choose one or another. There is no reason to fall in love with that person over that person because we're all identical. Thank heaven, we are all different. Of the 300 million people in the United States, unless you're an identical twin or a quintuplet, you are going to be different. And be thankful for that difference. It should be something that we should recognize is not extraordinary. It is ordinary that we are uniquely individuals. I'm going to tell you a very simple story. I was in kindergarten, and the teacher came up to me one day and said, "Earl, would you have your mom come up and see me?" Well, that gets you very, very scared when you're all 6 or 7 years old. I said, "Yes, ma'am, that's okay." So I went home and I warned my mom, and the teacher did call, and mother came up to visit with the teacher, and the teacher said, "Ma'am, I have been teaching kindergarten for 15 or more years, In all these years, I've only seen one child, boy or girl, that is completely, uniquely different. And my mother looked at her to say, oh, what's she going to tell me? And she said, there's one boy who can paint, he can draw, he can dance, he can read, and he can do things that are creative that nobody else can compare with. And that's your son. But when I asked the whole class, how much is 1 and 1? I see his eyes go looking up to the heavens, and he says, 7? And everybody laughs. Let me tell you, man, he will be creative in everything he does. Don't ever expect him to pass math or languages or do technical things. That's not the way his mind is wired. So I knew from an early start that I might be uniquely different. And I've proven it over these 92 years by finding solutions to problems that everybody else said, there isn't any answer to that. I think there are some other little things I'd like to mention to you. I served in World War II, and nobody could be a more proud veteran than serving in a very secret special command. And I took a vow with all the other guys in our team never to talk about it. And when people ask you, what did you do in World War II, Earl? All I could tell you is, I was a Navy corpsman, and I tried to do as little as possible, but we won the war. That's what it's all about, winning a war against your enemy. Your enemy is evil, and in that case, there was the Nazis on one hand, and there were the Japanese on the other hand. And I served mostly in the South Pacific. Well, it was a lesson I learned. And one of the lessons I learned very quickly was bullets and bombs are non-discriminatory. We could have a white guy and a brown guy and a black guy and somebody else there, and one goes down wounded, the other one is perfect, and the other one is killed. You never get that out of your mind. And as a medic, if somebody was shot and wounded, they start yelling, "Doc, Doc!" And you grab your little satchel and you stand up, and the Japanese, the enemies, looks for that guy with that little white band and a red cross on it and says, if I could kill him, I've killed 10 others. And you go over to that person, and all we had then, by comparison to all the progress in medicine, this is ridiculous. All I could do is give you some morphine, hoping and praying to relieve the pain, bandage up something to the best of my ability. No cell phone to call a doctor that might be in a destroyer or a battleship off the island. Nobody else to help me but a prayer to God Almighty saying, please let me help this guy. And what always amazed me, I couldn't believe it. When I'd run up to this person that is wounded and hurt, they're yelling, "Mom, Mom, help me." And why? The thought occurred to me, why isn't he yelling for God or Dad or his brother, his sister, his wife? It's Mom. Because in our hearts, we remember as little boys and girls when we fall and scrape our knee, who comes running out, wipes off the little blood you might have, puts a Band-Aid on, and gives you a hug and says, "Earl, you're going to be okay." And you get up and you start running away. So that bond of love is something that is in our mind, even when the bullets have torn us apart, even when we can't think of anything of, how do I live through this, or will I live through it? The word love has been indelibly implanted into my mind. I went into the Navy. I tried to get into the Marines when I was 16. The war was such a tremendous shock to all of us. I was watching with an uncle of mine a Dodgers baseball game. And then the announcement came across. December 7th, 1941. Few of you could remember or recognize that. And the baseball game became immaterial because they announced that the Japanese had flew over Pearl Harbor and wiped out our Navy. They sent torpedoes and bombs from airplanes and wiped out our sinking ships. We had the largest Navy, but it was destroyed in almost minutes or hours. And everybody, I don't care what your age was, became patriotic and said, we are going to declare war. And this is an authentic newspaper from that time. War declared. And if you could read the date, December 7th, 1941, and those pages are filled with the president announcing that we are going to go to fight against evil. And everybody, it included me and my friends and other people, wanted to go out and help. Moms left the kitchen to go into manufacturing bullets and bombs, tanks and ships and airplanes. We were patriotic beyond belief because we loved America and we knew that there was an evil force out there that wanted to destroy us. It's indelibly implanted in my mind to be careful, to be cautious, to be alert, and to be caring. Are we going through a similar situation now? I've never seen, never before. In 92 years, you do have the privilege of seeing lots of things. I didn't live through the Civil War when we did have whites fighting against others, brothers killing brothers or their family members over slavery. But honest Abraham Lincoln said, we're going to end that. And we won that war, and he declared the Emancipation Proclamation. And we were supposed to end discrimination, in that case, racism, forever. Well, we did a good job in reducing it, but not eliminating it. Not eliminating it. And that was the goal. And that was the goal of fighting against the Japanese and the Germans and their allies. That was the goal, that our allies, the English and the others, work with us as a team to eradicate that evil of hatred. Taking people, normal people, locking them up in cages, sound familiar? And then putting them on trains and shipping them to crematoriums where they became dust, rising into the heavens above. Never again to produce songs, to produce new products, to build countries, to be kind and human with their families. That's a catastrophe. That is the devil's occurrence. That is not America and should never be America. So why am I so upset? Why I am so inclined to want to cry that our country, the land that you and I love, the land that we have fought for to keep brave and safe, why are we crumbling into a division of 4 little letters, a division that says H-A-T-E, hate. And on the other hand, there is another 4-letter words, L-O-V-E, love. And I have learned from experience that love can conquer all when we are all fighting that evil, saying, let's get rid of it. That's not our country. That's not one nation under God, indivisible, with freedom, liberty, justice, and equality for all. All means you, me, and everybody else. Everybody else. There have always been haters. Unfortunately, that's been true since the days of, I guess, when God said Adam and Eve should join this world. Adam killed Cain and Cain killed Abel, and so there have always been people that are distraught for some reason. I don't know what that reason is. I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but I know over the years, over the centuries, as time has come on, goodness, caring, compassion, and love has conquered evil. And I think now, with the division of the nation, where families are divided, that you might have a daughter, a son, you might have a son-in-law or a daughter-in-law. We can't even talk with one another. We might have friends. We can't talk with one another because we each know there's a problem, evil versus good, and people are taking sides without even recognizing that they are choosing sides. And it is time, if we don't see ahead of our nose and stop putting blinders on, stop being dumb and deaf. We know that from the Roman Empire, which was a great nation that grew and was prosperous in its time, a dictator took over. And while Rome was fiddling, it became that dictatorship, and we don't even think of it now. It's not even a page in our history books. And then there was Germany. Germany, a civilized nation after World War I. People doing everything that we do now, living together in harmony and peace. 80% of them not paying any attention, not even involved, with 20% of the people gathering their guns and forming a cult to take over and destroy that nation and destroy 6 million others. Are we going to allow that to happen in the greatest nation of all? I'm not trying to scare you. That's not what my point is. I'm just trying to alert us to not just be indifferent, but be conscious. Know what our responsibility is. When you're in the Army or Navy, the Marine Corps, it doesn't matter. You know you have a duty, a responsibility, and to have the courage to end the enemy. I want to declare war on today's enemy. I want to see us declare war on an enemy, not with guns, not with bullets. I hate war. Like most veterans, if you've been through it, you know what happens to your buddy on this side or that side, or some lady flying an airplane. You don't want that to happen to the cream of the crop. You want those people to grow up and be productive and prosperous and make America even greater. And I've watched things change in America. I remember when we only had candles. Everything was lit by a candle. There were sconces on the wall and candles on your table. And then a guy decided, after taking 10,000 tries, he came up to invent the electric light. We take it for granted, don't we? But look around now. There's an electric light of every kind, of every form, every place, taking us out of the darkness into the brightness of a better world. That is what makes America and the rest of the world great. Progress. Progress by working together for the benefit of all people, not to just make money. I'm not objecting to you making money. I want you to be successful. But we also have a Statue of Liberty that the French built for us, and we have it in the New York Harbor, holding a torch, a light, that says, "Send me your wretched, you're poor, you're homeless, you're persecuted." And that Statue of Liberty is crying. Yes, it's made out of metal, but I bet if you looked into that statue's eyes, you would see tears, especially when that statue and we, as the citizens of America, see 3,000 innocent boys and girls escaping persecution with their parents, coming to the land of the free, where freedom and equality exist, supposedly, being locked up in cages like dogs, animals. And then we have the audacity to tear gas a mom holding a little girl or a little boy in her arms lovingly and bathe them in tear gas. Ladies and gentlemen, we are inhumane when we do acts like that. That's not America. It never has been America. Why should we stand quiet and be still and not yell and scream? And I am ashamed and I accuse every senator and every congressman for not enforcing the Lindbergh Law. I don't know whether you remember it. I was still young enough. A guy by the name of Charles Lindbergh got in a single-engine airplane and flew out of New York City and was the first one to fly across the Atlantic Ocean and landed in Paris. The very first person. Today we do it without even thinking about it. Oh, that's just common. That's progress. And Charles Lindbergh became so famous that people were disturbing him morning, noon, and night. He moved out to New Jersey, bought a beautiful home, two-story home, and one night, while he and Mrs. Lindbergh were asleep, a man with a ladder came upstairs to the second floor and took their baby and kidnapped that baby. The nation went wild. Charles Lindbergh was our hero, somebody who accomplished something that none of us had ever done before. And we all were angry. And they finally caught that man. And he went to jail for life, and Congress and the Senate passed a law: if you kidnap one child, you go to prison for life. Now, if we had an executive who passed a rule to say, kidnap all 3,000 of those kids, if I had the privilege of being a senator of a Democrat, I'd put on my military cap and I'd get up there and I would say, he goes to jail for 3,000 lifetimes. This is a blot of what we have done and we have allowed to keep doing, abusing children, a blot that is black on our nation's history. And I would never want to read it again or see my children or my grandchildren or great-children understand. You mean, Grandpa, you allowed it? You didn't stand up? I said, no, I was chicken, like everybody else. You have to have guts to win a war. And when we see evil of any kind, and if you don't think kidnapping 3,000 innocent children, escaping persecution to come to the land of the free, then you do not understand how this nation was founded. Our pilgrims escaped Europe's persecution, came here, landed on Plymouth Rock in 1776. And since then, they have grown a nation piece by piece to the democracy that was the idol of the rest of the world. And now the rest of the world is laughing at us. We have shed our bonds of love with other nations, that if they didn't help us during World War II and we didn't help them, I don't know what the results would have been. I would hope that God would have figured a way out that we might have won. But you have to work together. I know I am committed. I'm on a mission, and my mission as the last hurrah in my life. At 92, you don't know when God is going to pull the plug. 600 World War II veterans die every day. There won't be any of us left very soon. But my mission in life is to enroll you, to enlist you in an army of 300 million Americans, pledged, swearing together, we will eliminate hatred, bigotry, discrimination, persecution, racism. And when we do that, that will be America to me. I'm the first person from Houston, an advertising professional, to be in the Advertising Hall of Fame. I've had a blessed life persuading, motivating, and influencing the general public to buy my clients' products and services. I know what it takes to do that. So I created a logo, and I hope you can see that. It's red, white, and blue. It's not Republican. It's not Democratic. It's not independent. It is nonpartisan, but it is 100% patriotic. Patriotic. And as I said earlier, I never saw the nation gathered together like they did when they saw us being endangered by the Japanese and the Nazis on Germany, and became patriotic. Yes, you couldn't buy sugar, you couldn't get tires for your car, you couldn't even buy a new car, you had to line up for gasoline, but nobody complained. We all wanted to win that war against evil. And the division in the United States today, if you can't see it with your own eyes, you can't realize it with your mind and with your heart and your brain, it is splitting us apart where we're on a slippery slope that we will swiftly slide down into a dictatorship. And don't think it can't happen here, because people are indifferent, and you don't care, and you don't see what is happening. You don't see that we take these innocent children and lock them up in cages and don't do anything about it except complain and say, why are they lying on concrete floors, on mattresses? They shouldn't be there in the first place. Why? Because somebody wanted to build a wall. To do what? We should be building bridges of welcome to other immigrants, because my grandparents were immigrants. My mom, my dad, they were immigrants. They came from Europe escaping persecution. And if you look at your family, if they went before the Pilgrims, they were all immigrants, all of us. So what makes us so different that we have to say we're above you or below you, or you're just different so you don't count? Everybody counts as long as they have the opportunity, as long as we give them the privilege of living like we want everyone to have the benefits, the glories of living in the world's most remarkable country when we are together, working together for one another. And I am going to make a comment. And I think a lot of you may decide, this guy, what does he speak like that? Well, one thing I did learn all my life, try your darndest to tell the truth. I don't know whether I told you this story. I told you about my mother being invited up to see the kindergarten teacher. Well, one day, I heard people talking about a moral code. And I said, oh, what's a moral code? Is that when the Secret Service or the FBI sends telegrams to one another so that nobody knows what they're talking about? So I went into the kitchen. I said, Mom, could you tell me what a moral code is? Is that when the government is changing secrets? She looked at me and she said, Earl, a moral code is when you decide how you want to live your life productively, meaning serving others and doing good. I said, Mom, am I allowed to write a moral code? And she said, Earl, please do. So I went into my bedroom, I guess, and said, what would be my moral code? I'm 8 or 9 years old. I'm not sure of the age. And I came out and I said, Mom, I wrote down my moral code. Would you listen to me? She said, sure. So she's sitting down and I'm standing there. There's this little 8 or 9-year-old and saying, my moral code says, love God, make friends. And why at that age? That's what you want to do. You want to make friends of your boyfriend so you could play ball and so forth. And then I said, serve others. And my mother looked at me, stood up from that chair, threw her arms around me, bent over, gave me a kiss, and said, Earl, keep that moral code for the rest of your life. Never forget it. Love God, make friends, serve others. Now, I probably have made mistakes. Who doesn't? But I will say, it's hard to put a figure on it, but 99% of the time, I've never left that out of my mind. And I feel all the better for it. I've served others in many ways, and I've planted seeds of ideas. I'll give you an example, very true example. 4 ladies came into my ad agency and they said, Earl, could we talk with you? I said, I'd be glad to, because one of those ladies was the wife of the president of a supermarket chain that we represented. And I said, ladies, what have you got in mind? And they said, well, I'll name the lady. It was a lady by the name of Mary Keegan, who everyone in Houston at that time knew was a philanthropist doing good, particularly in the Catholic faith. And she had another lady with her who I did not know. She was a nun of the Catholic faith. And then the next lady was Barbara Fallick. Barbara Fallick's husband was the president of Weingarten's supermarket chain. In those years, the #1 supermarket chain in the whole Houston, Galveston marketing area. Her maiden name was Weingarten. Today it was Fallick. And the 4th lady was another lady by the name of Lillian Pasternak. And Lillian Pasternak was running the Foundation for the Blind. And I was familiar with that because my wife, Natalie, helped work at that organization. And I said, ladies, what do you want to do? What is on your mind? And they said, Earl, we would like to end hunger. I said, what a great, noble cause. People are starving. And if we could ever end hunger, it'd be remarkable. I said, do you have any ideas how to do that? No, Earl, that's why we came to see you. I said, okay. You kind of hit me sort of cold, but I think I have an idea. There are millions of ladies going into your supermarkets or other supermarkets every day, and they're purchasing foods. I'll bet if we ask them to take a non-perishable product, either a canned good or packaged, and put it in a barrel, and we pick up the barrel and bring it to hospitals or other service organizations, they will feed millions of people. The lady said, great idea. I said, but I don't want a black barrel. That's all we see in Houston. Those barrels are used for shipping oil and materials like that overseas or around the country. I don't think a black barrel will work in a supermarket. what do you think of a red barrel? One of those ladies out of the blue said, I have an uncle that manufactures those barrels. I'm going to ask him if he won't donate the red barrels to get the program started. I said, hallelujah, great idea. Let's go from there. But Barbara Weingarten-Fallick said, Earl, marketing in any supermarket lasts 30 days. And I looked her straight in the eye and I said, Barbara, if you allow us to market it, promote it, and advertise it, I'm going to bet it'll last a lot longer than 30 days. Everybody said, well, let's give it a try. Ladies and gentlemen, it's more than 30 years old since that happened. And today, unfortunately, those ladies were the same age as I was. They've all passed away. But they left a legacy that became the Houston Food Bank that serves more people with healthy food every day. And other food banks throughout the United States have followed that example. If you plant a seed and you water it, which is what we did there, and it starts to grow out of the ground, other people come in and fertilize that, and it becomes a stalk. And that stalk grows up and gets buds on it, and sunshine comes down from the heaven with rain, and the buds burst open, and they become bouquets of flowers that have seeds within them, and they spread from coast to coast, from shore to shore. That is what I am pleading, you, and you, to help me spread the seed of love from the little buds that will go from shore to shore across the country, every state, every city, every town, no matter how big or how small, to spread love thy neighbor. Okay, I started to tell you that I did a whole bunch of things to get this across. At one time, 3 police officers did a very erroneous thing. They took a prisoner out of jail. He happened to be Hispanic. And they put him in handcuffs behind his back. And they walked him out of that jail down. Right in front of it is a river. It's called the Buffalo River. They threw him into that river, and what the heck do you think is going to happen? He drowned. He had to die. That news got out very quickly, and everybody in Houston, I mean everybody, became upset, and they hated the police force. And what does the mayor do? You always have to blame somebody. So he pointed his finger at the police chief and said, you're fired, and hired a new guy. And the new guy was Pappy Bond, sort of a big bull of a guy, twice my size. And Pappy Bond sent out a request for proposal to all the advertising agencies saying, change the image of the Houston Police Department. We don't deserve for what 3 errant police officers did. Okay. I looked at it, and I announced to my team, I said, we just have had a request to try to change the image of the Houston Police Department. And everybody said, oh, we don't want to help them. Look what they did. I said, it's our duty. It's our responsibility. If we don't help them, who the heck will? So I said, create a department, start working on a billboard, a campaign, whatever you come up with. And morning after morning, they would come watching in it, and I'd look at it, and I would say, guys, that doesn't make me love a cop. Go back and do it again. Guys, that isn't helping me love a cop. We have a hurdle to jump over. Do something different. Well, I didn't get anything different. But that night, like you and I, we're watching television, we're having dinner, and a commercial that we've all seen comes on, that there are children starving in Africa. And if you care about those young boys and girls, make a small donation. I wrote a little word down, and in the morning, I wrote 5 words out, and I called the creative department in and I said, hey guys, girls, this is the answer. And they look at me, uh-oh, here he goes. The boss thinks he knows more than we do. I don't know more than they do, but every once in a while, a spark hits you of a different idea, and that's why different people create different things. And I came up with something that was based not on my thoughts, but on if you care for children. So I came up with slogan, the badge means you care. They said to me, you're saying the badge means you care is going to make everybody love a cop? I said, believe me, if we do it right, it will change their minds. Well, I said, what I want, a blue background for the blue costume that officers wear. I want big bold letters in white against that. The badge means you care. But at the far end of that, I want that silver shining badge. Anybody know a police officer? They said, no, we don't, but Carol Kelly, your secretary, is dating one. Why don't you ask her? God works in mysterious manners. And I said, Carol, I understand you're dating a police officer. Would you ask him to please come in to the agency, and while he's here, we will shoot a photograph of his badge. She said, coincidentally, Earl, we have a date tonight, and he is coming by to pick me up. I said, gosh, what a lucky break. So this young, handsome police officer comes in the evening, and he looked like Hollywood. He was tall and slim and had that erect stature. And you would just have to look at him and say, police officer, somebody who you would respect just the way he looks. And we borrowed his badge while he stood over while my folks shot the photograph. Gave the badge back, and he and Officer Kilty left the office to go out on their date for dinner. We finished that badge, I should say the poster, and had it ready. In those years, we didn't have cameras and projectors. You did a artwork on a board of that billboard, and you put a piece of paper over it, and you would present it to your prospect. Well, it was our turn of, I don't know how many agencies, to go down to the police station, and I walked in there and I thought I was in Gestapo headquarters. It was a room, small and narrow, 3 police officers on one side, 3 police officers on the other side, all dressed in uniform. In those days, they all had their hair shaved close to their head. Pappy Bond sitting way across the table. Big man, threatening just by looking at you. And I said, Chief, I don't want to waste your time. I want to show you how we think we can change the image to make people once again admire and love the police officers. So all of those officers were looking at me, what kind of magic is he going to show? So I took the piece of paper and I flipped it over and I said, the badge means you care. And Pappy Bond, this hulk of a man, hits that table, and it was shaking, and he says, who wrote that? And I got so nervous, I said, Chief, it must have been one of the guys back at the office, sir. And Pappy Bond said, you go back and tell that guy that's exactly what we feel and what we do and how we will act. And people will respect us because we respect them. Earl, 2,500 of those BOPA stickers on my desk this week. Speak to my deputy. You're hired." And off Pappy Bond walked. And there was a line of other advertising agencies waiting to give their pitch. But sometimes, if you deliver the right message at the right time, you can change it. Now, that bumper sticker wasn't on 2,500 cars. That was just for the police department's vehicles, their trucks, whatever they had. But within weeks, there wasn't an automobile, a truck, any kind of vehicle, a bus that didn't have the badge means you care. And what does that do? The person that puts the bumper sticker on feels he's participating. And then that person who looks at that bumper sticker in driving says, "I need to do that, otherwise I look like I'm not part of the team." So it spread like crazy, ladies and gentlemen. And even today, 30, 40 years later, occasionally I'll see an old truck riding around and it still has the badge means you care. But I want to tell you the real part of the story. I told you that Officer Kilty took Carol Kelly out to dinner, and after dinner, he drove her to her apartment and left her to go, and then he went to the worst part of town where the drugs are dealt just like candy. So he climbed up 2 stairs, and Officer Kilty knocked on the door and said, "Houston Police Department, Drug Enforcement Division." The door didn't open, but through that door was a shotgun shot that hit him in the heart. And Officer Kilty bent over, bleeding, and rolled down the stairs to the first floor in a pool of blood and died. He gave his life to fighting evil. I don't want you to have to give your life to fight evil, but I want you to give your heart and your soul. We all live by example. And if the leader of our country abuses women, and we see it on television, and if he abuses people by calling them funny names and makes funny remarks about them, and abuses our allies that they no longer want to work with us, that's not the example I want to see my children grow up with. There is an example that we can show, that when we sit down at the table, don't just look at your cell phone or the TV. Talk to your boys and girls. Tell them that you want to understand what's in their lives and you share what's in your life. And when they leave in the morning to get on the bus to go to school, don't just say, "Sam, have a happy day. Evelyn, just enjoy yourself today." Say, "I love you, honey. Have a happy, happy day." They don't hear the word love often enough. And I worked for 7 years for the United States Justice Department in the DEA division, speaking to 3 schools a day, from kindergarten all the way through college, not only in the Houston area, but after maybe the first 6 months, other DEA divisions around the United States said, "Hey, there's one guy that everybody is talking about. I don't even know his name, but who is it?" And the special agent in charge, Don Clark, said, "We all know who it is." Well, what does he do that's so different? He goes in to every class, and the first thing he says, he looks at everybody smiling and he says, "I love you, I love you, and I love you." And he says, "Don't think of me as a teacher. Think of me as your grandfather. I love you, and what I am going to do is help you grow up to be the best citizen in the United States. You're going to be so proud as a man or as a girl. Everybody will like you because you are a human being, caring and serving one another, respecting and having compassion for each other. Ladies and gentlemen, the truth of the matter is, whenever I finished a class, those boys and girls wouldn't let me out. They'd grab me around the knees, and they wouldn't let go of me. Every Christmas, my office walls were lined with pictures that they would send in. "We love you, Papa Earl." I didn't do anything different except tell them there is love, and love gives you hope. You will be better if you don't smoke tobacco, don't drink the alcohol, don't get involved with illegal drugs. I had 4,300 boys and girls who voluntarily joined the club. And every week, my wife and I would buy a little gift. It was nothing expensive. Might be a little calendar, might be a poster, whatever, and sent it out to those 4,300 boys and girls and promised them, if you keep the vow not to smoke tobacco of any kind, not to drink alcohol of any kind, and never get involved with illegal drugs, we will give you a $1,000 bonus, a bonus to go to college. And there was only one proviso. Your principal had to agree you never got into trouble with any of those products, and your mom and dad had to also sign an affidavit. And when it came from taking those boys and girls in kindergarten, putting them into middle school, I should say elementary school and middle school and high school, and they're ready to go to college, there were a number of them that got the $1,000 scholarship, and the billboard company voluntarily took photos of them and posted it around the city of Houston. We can accomplish miracles when we want to do things together for the goodness of other human beings. So I took little boys and girls, and hopefully, I don't know what has happened to them since then, but I'll bet someday they must think, hey, Papa Earl gave me a moral code to follow. All I'm saying, there is a moral code that we together, you and I, are going to declare war against. And how do you do it? Well, I'll ask you a question first, and it's a very interesting question. Who do you think, you're all smart, you all see advertising, who do you think is the largest, most continuous advertiser, not only in the United States, but in the world? I'll give you a minute to think about it. Think real hard. Now, if we were in the room together and you were in my house, you would probably shout out, and I would guess somebody might say, maybe it's Google, maybe it's Facebook. Oh no, it's Coca-Cola. Ladies and gentlemen, maybe one or two thought of the right answer, but believe it or not, it is the Christian faith. And you say, what? Now think, every Sunday, gong, 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 call all ye faithful, come worship together. There's the cross in the church, and a cross in another church. I go into a small town, the church is this big, but there's a cross on it. And if I pass by a hospital that's run by the Catholic, a cross on it. And I worked for the Catholic community, representing the Sisters of Charity for many, many years, and traveled with them from one hospital to another. And in every room, there was a cross. And when I go into businesses, I see a cross. When I go to my wellness class, the walls are covered with cross. How many of you ladies are wearing a cross as a pendant around your neck? How many of you guys have a lapel pin on with a cross? It is something to remind us from the moment we wake up in the morning to the time we have noon and the time we go to bed at night to keep God and your religion and your faith in your mind and to follow those words. But the problem is that do we follow? Do we understand? Do we know the meaning and the significance of those words? In the days of the Hebrews, 5,000 years ago, God sent down a message. And it's a message that said, love thy neighbor as you would like your neighbor to love you. Well, people couldn't spread the word. They lived in sandals and robes, and they spread the word through people writing scriptures. And you heard it, and he heard it, and everybody writes a different meaning. But those words have been in the Old Testament for over 5,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago, a Jewish carpenter, the bespoken Son of God, remembered those words. And he put them in the New Testament. Love thy neighbor. And Mark followed up and said, those few words are God's most sacred commandment. Remember them and follow them. Well, I go to houses of worship and I hear the words said like machine gun bullets trying to kill you. Nobody paying attention to it. Nobody saying, I'm going to follow them. I'm putting them in my heart. I'm putting them into my soul. I'm going to make sure I act exactly like that. And that's why I was motivated to come up with this campaign. Yes, to have a cap. And let me point out, this cap is red, white, and blue. Purposely. It's patriotic. It's nonpartisan. I don't care about the Republicans. I don't care about the Democrats or the Independents. I care about America, the United States of America, not the divided, separated states of America. So I did it purposely. And I love it. It says, I love, and it's a heart, thy neighbor. And that's America to me. And those are not my words. Those are not my words. That is God's message. And believe it or not, that's America to me. That wasn't God's message. But one of my idols, when the time I was a little boy, was Frank Sinatra. And he sings a very patriotic song about the nation. And it ends with, that's America to me. And that got tattooed on my heart. And I said, when I'm going to come up with love thy neighbor, it's going to be, that's America to me. And my goal is when I ask you the next time, what is the most popular advertising product, brand, or statement? 300 million Americans are going to say, love thy neighbor. Love thy neighbor. Because that is America to me. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I know I'm taking an awful lot of time, and I do want to wind this up. And I hope I haven't bored you to tears. But I do cry when I see us tearing apart a democracy that I and 16 million other young men and women went to not only defend the nation, to make sure that each of you and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren will live in peace, harmony, and security together. And now when I see it being torn apart like a piece of paper, it brings tears to my eyes and makes me upset. And maybe I shouldn't be so sensitive to it, but the war taught me a lesson that I'll never get out of my mind. A lesson that I told you earlier, bullets and bombs are non-discriminatory. And I had brothers that I tried to help And I might have been the fortunate one that God said, Earl, you could be wounded, you might be shot at, but you'll go home because you have a mission that I want you to complete. And I know that sounds strange, but I've asked some of my very, very pious Christian friends, do you ever lie in bed at night and God talks to you? Yeah, we hear God whispering to us. And I said, my God doesn't whisper. He speaks in a deep tone of voice. And he says, Earl, there's a problem in America, and only you have the solution. Only me? Natalie, God just said there's a problem in America and that I have the solution. I better think about what idea I could plant and water and see it grow and grow and grow and then spread its seeds across America. And there's only one word. The word was love. And love came back to me from 5,000 years ago and 2,000 years ago. And I said, I don't have to be original. Why can't I use God's message and make everybody understand it's our obligation, our duty, our responsibility to live and love and work with each other in harmony, compassion, and understanding. It's not difficult. It's not difficult at all. We all size up one another. That's natural. But don't size up one another just because the skin color might be different or gender might be different and have preconceived ideas. We are all, you is me and me is you, and think of yourself being in that other person's shoes. It is just a simple task. And I think what I've done is summarize it in a very, very short song. And why? Because I learned in teaching those kids not to do harm to their bodies. Use songs. Songs will get into your heart and they stay in you, and they can help you change the world. So I wrote a song, and maybe 30 years ago I could have sung this well. But don't worry about it. You may not be able to sing it well, but you're going to learn how to sing it. And it's very simple. And all it says is, make every day Valentine's Day. Make every dream come true. Make every day Valentine's Day. Love thy neighbor, and your neighbor will love you too. And your neighbor will love you too. It's very simple. And how do we get everybody to do it? And I'm going to explain. This is a webinar, and I am not here to sell something like a brand new pill that'll make you thin, or here's a pill that'll make you smart. I just want to help each other learn a simple thing that God has taught us, to love one another. And I've given you an example. So I have a bumper sticker, a simple bumper sticker. And I have a window decal, And I have a little badge that you can wear. And I've got the pendants and everything else. And I also have developed a t-shirt. And on the front of it, it says just what I've been talking about. And on the back, to remind you, we could make every day Valentine's Day. That doesn't mean I give you candy. I give you roses every day. Might not be a bad idea, but what I can give you is love and understanding to make America one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty, freedom, and justice, wiping out racism, wiping out anti-Semitism. And there may be 40,000, there may be 400,000 who will never get that message. All I can say, you have the choice. There are pearly gates above in which God will welcome you. There is also a land known of the devil. It's your choice, ladies and gentlemen. I, for one, would choose where God would welcome me with open arms and embrace me and say, God's child, come live with me together, because you did everything on earth to make it heaven on earth instead of making it hell on earth. Is that too much to ask of you? So I'm going to make a deal. These hats ordinarily, and this hat, they all cost about $40. And a bumper sticker typically costs $15. I asked the United States Marine Corps to replace my bumper sticker that the car wash wiped off, and they wanted $25 plus $10 for shipping it. Okay, if this is $40 and that's $15, it's $55 only today, because I want you to get involved and be the first people in your neighborhood to show that you do want to follow God's message. Send me a $10 bill, a $10 check, and I'll send you both of these. Let me take the cost of it, and let me explain. When you send me anything in money, it is tax deductible. So if I ask you for $100, you could write it off, because I run a nonprofit, Back Our Vets. I take every penny I raise for Back Our Vets and I give it to the surviving children of our fallen heroes who gave their lives and never had enough money to leave behind. And their children will have enough money to go to a college of their choice. I'm not kidding when I said I have a moral code, and I felt all these 92 and a half years, Earl, live up to it. Live up to what your mom said. God bless you if you will do it. So send me $10. Now, all you have to do is send it to Earl, E-A-R-L, at backourvets.com. If you don't want to send it as a, well, you can't send it as a check, give me your name and give me your address, and I will send you the cap and the hat, and then you could send me the $10. I believe in trusting you, and I believe you should be trusting me. Isn't that fair? $10, have a cap, have the bumper sticker, and then you at least are part of that army that has declared war on hatred and change hatred into 4 letters of love, love thy neighbor. And I have posters that I want to see in every house of worship. I have a poster of a black couple, attractive black couple. They're just making the vows, and they're bending over, rubbing noses together like Eskimos do to kiss one another. And I have posters to be in every house of worship where the majority of the members might be white. And it is absolutely a thrilling poster. The groom is standing over her shoulder, and she reaches over to pat his cheek. Just a motion of endearment, of love. And love conquers all. I'm going to do just one last thing, and I'm going to sing my song again. And when you see this, the words are going to scroll across the screen. And I want you to sit in your home, in your couch, and invite your little boy or girl, or whoever is there with you, and sing the song. You don't have to be Frank Sinatra. You don't have to be Beyonce. You don't even want to sound like Earl. But sing it, and let the words mean something to you. And remember, we can make every day Valentine's Day. Make every dream come true. Make every day Valentine's Day. Love thy neighbor, and your neighbor will love you too. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being patient with me, and all I can say is may God bless you and have a most happy, prosperous life.
For questions or comments, good or bad, or if you would like Earl to talk to your group, company, school, or house of worship, email Earl at backourvets.com.